The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged mountains of planet Dracora, painting the skies in shades of gold and violet. In the distance, enormous dragon cities sprawled across the cliffs, their spires reaching toward the heavens. Each city hummed with life, the roar of engines and the flapping of wings blending into a sound that was both terrifying and beautiful. At the heart of this world, the Dragon Emperor reigned supreme. His name alone inspired awe and fear across the galaxy. No creature, dragon or otherwise, dared oppose him, for he was known to possess strength unmatched, intelligence unrivaled, and a sense of justice that was merciless to those who broke the law. Yet for all his power, the Emperor's life was lonely. His palace was vast and cold, filled with treasures and scrolls that recorded the history of his empire. He had advisors, generals, and attendants, all bowing to him, yet none offered the warmth of companionship. Decisions about war, peace, and the survival of countless worlds rested on his shoulders, and he carried that weight with the discipline of a true ruler. His days passed in unbroken order, filled with council meetings, inspections, and flights across his territories to maintain dominance. Every action was calculated, every word measured, and every emotion carefully hidden. He had lived like this for centuries, believing that connection was a weakness, and power was the only thing worth having. That morning, the Emperor decided to visit a border planet, a small world on the edge of his empire that was known for its bustling spaceports and mixed population. Dragons rarely ventured there, and many considered it beneath the Emperor to step foot on such a planet. But he felt a curiosity he could not explain, a pull toward something different, something beyond the rigid order of his palace. He landed on the planet in a burst of fire and wind, startling the local inhabitants, who scattered as his immense form touched the ground. As he wandered through the crowded streets, his sharp eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. Merchants shouted about exotic goods, aliens bartered for rare minerals, and humans moved quickly, carrying trays of food or pushing carts laden with supplies. Humans were common on this planet, yet they were always small, fragile, and easily frightened in the presence of dragons. They existed at the edges of his vision, like insects scurrying beneath his feet, never demanding his attention. That was until he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. A tiny creature lay huddled near a pile of crates, shaking violently. Its scales shimmered in the morning light, but one wing was bent at an unnatural angle, and its small body trembled from pain. The Emperor's instincts told him to look away, to leave the weak to fend for themselves, as he had done countless times before. But something stopped him. He noticed a figure moving carefully toward the injured creature. It was a human, a waitress by the looks of her uniform, plain and worn from long hours of work. She did not hesitate. She bent down, speaking softly to the baby dragon in a language he did not understand, yet the tone was gentle, filled with concern. She lifted the creature with surprising strength for someone so small, cradling it in her arms as if it were the most precious thing in the galaxy. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Dragons were taught that humans were weak, timid, and only useful as laborers or entertainers. They were not capable of heroism. Yet here was this one, ignoring danger, showing courage and compassion for a creature far larger and stronger than herself. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor felt something stir inside him, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even admiration. He watched as she carried the baby dragon through crowded streets, carefully avoiding obstacles and shouting vendors. The Emperor followed at a distance, unnoticed, marveling at her determination. Every step she took was deliberate, careful, and yet fearless. She did not run when a group of local scavengers approached, nor did she drop the creature in fear. Instead, she held it closer, speaking softly, coaxing it to calm down. Eventually, she reached a small cafe tucked between two towering buildings. The place was humble, nothing like the grand halls of the emperor's palace. Inside, she laid the baby dragon on a clean counter, surrounding it with soft cloths and bowls of water. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound and examining the broken wing with hands that trembled only slightly. The emperor stepped closer, intrigued by the way she handled the creature. "Why do you care so much for it?" a voice whispered inside him, though he did not speak aloud. He had never asked such a question before, nor had he expected an answer. Dragons did not care for the weak. They crushed them or ignored them. Compassion was seen as a weakness, a flaw that led to downfall. Yet here, in this tiny cafe on a border planet, the concept of care was not weakness, it was strength. The human worked tirelessly, humming softly as she tended to the baby dragon. She fashioned a splint for its wing, fed it small pieces of food, and spoke encouragingly, her words carrying warmth and life. The emperor noticed something else. The baby dragon responded to her. It nuzzled her hands, lifted its head when she spoke, and even attempted to flap its mending wing. Slowly, it began to trust her. The emperor's curiosity deepened. He had seen armies rise and fall, planets conquered and liberated, yet nothing had ever made him feel such intense fascination. He moved even closer, careful to remain unseen, and watched as the human refused help from anyone else. She did not call for a healer, nor did she summon someone stronger to assist. She believed in her own ability, in her own strength, and in her own compassion. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher into the sky. The cafe grew busy with customers, humans and aliens alike, yet she paid them no mind. Her focus remained on the injured dragon, her determination unwavering. The emperor felt an unfamiliar sensation. Was this what it felt like to care? To be drawn not by fear or duty, but by admiration and respect? Then the moment of truth arrived. The baby dragon let out a soft, pitiful cry. Outside, a group of scavengers, noticing the unusual creature, attempted to break into the cafe. They were armed with sharp tools and rudimentary weapons, confident that a human could not defend herself. The emperor expected her to panic, to drop the dragon and flee as any ordinary being would. But she did not. She stood tall, placing herself between the intruders and the creature. "Back!" she shouted, her voice small but firm, carrying a courage that rivaled dragons many times her size. The scavengers laughed, thinking it was a joke, but she did not retreat. She waved a metal tray threateningly, brandishing it like a weapon. One of them lunged forward, and she dodged skillfully, keeping the dragon safe. The emperor's jaw tightened. He had expected weakness, but there was none. The human's bravery, her intelligence, her willingness to risk herself for another, left him speechless. Never in his long life had he witnessed such a display of courage from a being so small, so fragile in appearance. It was humbling, terrifying, and mesmerizing all at once. Finally, the scavengers retreated, muttering curses and disbelief. The human sank to the floor, breathing heavily, her body trembling from adrenaline and fear. Yet she smiled at the baby dragon, who nuzzled her chest in gratitude. She whispered words the emperor could not understand, yet the meaning was clear. "You are safe now. I will not let anyone hurt you." The emperor stepped back, hidden in the shadows, and felt a strange warmth inside him. He had ruled through fear for centuries, believing it was the only way to maintain control. But here was proof that strength could come in different forms, not only through power and domination, but through compassion, courage, and dedication. As he prepared to leave, the emperor made a decision that would change the course of his life. He would return. He would learn more about this human, about her world, and about the power that lay in beings he had long underestimated. For the first time, he saw humans not as weak creatures to be ignored, but as something extraordinary. And he knew, deep within him, that his life, and perhaps even his empire, would never be the same again. The human returned to her work, unaware of the silent observer in the alley outside. She continued caring for the baby dragon, her determination unshaken, her courage unbroken. And somewhere in the shadows, the Dragon Emperor watched, his heart and mind alight with thoughts and questions he had never dared to consider. The world was changing, and he would change with it, or risk being left behind. As night fell over the city, the lights of the cafes, the streets, and the distant dragon towers twinkled like stars, scattered across the land. The Emperor retreated to his ship, his mind still filled with images of the small human who had dared to defy expectation. For the first time in centuries, he felt a spark of hope, a spark that told him life could be more than power and fear. It could be compassion, courage, and connection. And so, the story of an emperor, a human, and a baby dragon began, one act of kindness at a time. The days that followed were unlike anything the Dragon Emperor had ever experienced. Though he ruled over an empire that spanned galaxies, he had never been so captivated by a single human. He returned to the border planet repeatedly, watching from a distance as she continued to care for the baby dragon. Each time he learned something new, not about strategy or power, but about humanity itself. The human moved with quiet confidence, her hands steady as she fed the dragon and repaired its broken wing. The creature, once trembling with pain, now seemed to trust her completely. It would nuzzle her fingers, chirp softly, and even attempt to fly short distances across the cafe floor. The human laughed at its small jumps, gently guiding it back when it stumbled. Her joy was simple but pure, and the Emperor felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, an emotion he could not name, but one that was warm and sharp at the same time. One afternoon, as the Emperor watched from the shadows, a group of alien traders entered the cafe. They were tall, covered in scales, and their eyes glinted with suspicion as they noticed the unusual sight: a human tending to a baby dragon. Whispers spread through the room, drawing the attention of other patrons. Some marveled, others sneered, and the traders began to approach. The human did not panic. She looked at the approaching aliens and straightened her back. "Please," she said calmly, "do not touch him. He is injured and needs care." Her voice carried authority despite her small size, and there was no hint of fear in her eyes. The traders hesitated. None had seen humans behave this way. To them, humans were fragile, easily frightened, and limited in courage. Yet here was one defying expectation, standing between them and a dragon that could easily outmatch any of them. They exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to proceed. The Emperor observed silently, fascinated by the power of her presence. She did not have scales, wings, or fire, yet she commanded respect with nothing more than determination and calmness. He had never considered that true strength could come from courage and conviction rather than raw power. Suddenly, one of the traders reached for the baby dragon. The human moved faster than the eye could follow, placing herself squarely between the creature and the intruder. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the cafe. The trader froze, surprised by the speed and ferocity in her movements. "You dare challenge us, human?" one hissed. "I dare," she replied without hesitation, "and I will not let you hurt him." For a moment, the room was tense, as if the walls themselves held their breath. The other patrons watched in silence, unsure if the situation would escalate. The baby dragon whimpered softly, its small eyes fixed on the human who had saved it. The Emperor stepped closer, curiosity outweighing caution. He had never interfered in the affairs of mortals on such a personal level, but something in him urged him forward. He observed the human's determination, and a thought struck him with force. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps they had a strength that dragons, even those like him, could not always see. The traders, realizing the human would not back down, slowly retreated. Their pride was wounded, but the human had proven herself in a way they could not ignore. She returned to the baby dragon, cradling it gently as if nothing had happened. The creature nuzzled her, chirping softly in appreciation. The emperor felt a strange mix of pride and awe. She had faced danger with no weapons, no wings, and no fire, and yet she had prevailed. In the following days, the emperor began to interact more openly with the human, though still carefully. He revealed himself only in moments when she was alone with the baby dragon, observing her reactions. At first, she was terrified. A massive dragon, scales glinting and eyes blazing with intensity, had appeared in her small cafe. Her hands trembled, and she instinctively stepped back, shielding the baby dragon. "I mean no harm," the emperor said, his voice deep but calm. "I wish only to speak." The human hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. But there was something in the way he looked at her, a careful, curious gaze that did not threaten, that made her relax slightly. Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I have come to understand," he replied. "I have watched your actions. I have seen how you care for this creature. You are remarkable." The human blinked, unsure whether to be frightened or honored. "I'm just helping him," she said softly. "He's hurt. I can't leave him alone." "And yet you do so with courage," the emperor observed. "You risk yourself for another being even when others would not. Why?" The human considered the question. She thought about her family, her world, and the countless small choices she had made to help others. "Because it is the right thing to do," she finally said. "Because if I could save someone, I would. Even if I am small. Even if I am afraid." The emperor was silent, reflecting on her words. For centuries, he had measured strength by power, by dominance, and by fear. Yet here was proof that courage could exist in forms far different from his own. He had been strong, yes, but she was strong in ways he had never imagined. Days turned into weeks. The baby dragon grew stronger under the human's care, its wing healing slowly but steadily. The emperor observed quietly, learning from their interactions. He noticed the human's patience, her careful attention to detail, and her ability to inspire trust not only in the dragon, but in other creatures around her. It was a different kind of leadership, one built on respect and care rather than fear, and the emperor found himself drawn to it. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, the human looked out across the city. The baby dragon perched on her shoulder, its small claws gripping gently, and she spoke softly to it. "Soon you will fly again," she said, smiling. "And when you do, we will be ready." The emperor, hidden in the shadows, felt a pang in his chest. He had seen countless battles, witnessed empires rise and fall. Yet this simple scene, human and dragon together, trusting and caring, moved him more than any victory ever had. For the first time, he wondered what it would be like to live differently, to rule not through fear, but through respect and understanding. It was during one of these evenings that a new danger emerged. A group of rival dragons, jealous of the emperor's power and fearful of the change he might bring, discovered his presence on the planet. They were formidable warriors, known for their cunning and cruelty. Their plan was simple: capture the baby dragon, humiliate the human, and use this to undermine the emperor's rule. The emperor sensed their approach long before they arrived. His instincts, honed over centuries, told him that conflict was coming, yet he did not act immediately. He wanted to see how the human would respond. He wanted to see if the courage she had shown before would hold when faced with true danger. The rival dragons arrived at night, their shadows stretching across the city streets. They were massive, scales glinting in moonlight, eyes glowing with malice. The human did not know they were coming, but the baby dragon sensed the threat and stirred nervously. She held it close, whispering soothing words, her hands trembling slightly but steady. Suddenly, the dragons attacked. One lunged at the building, sending debris crashing to the ground. Another roared, shaking the walls, and the humans and aliens inside scattered in fear. The human did not flee. She stood her ground, cradling the baby dragon and moving with a determination that seemed to defy logic. "Stay back!" she shouted, waving a metal tray like a shield. The dragons laughed, amused at the tiny human's defiance, but they did not anticipate her agility and courage. She dodged, rolled, and moved with precision, keeping the baby dragon safe. Every step, every motion was calculated, born of love and necessity rather than skill or training. The Emperor watched, his heart pounding in a way it never had before. She was facing creatures far stronger than herself, creatures who could crush her in an instant. Yet she did not falter. He realized that strength was not always measured in fire or claws. It could also be measured in courage, in determination, and in the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. Finally, after a tense struggle, the rival dragons withdrew, frustrated and humiliated. The human sank to the floor, exhausted but unbroken. She looked at the baby dragon. Her eyes filled with relief and love. The creature chirped softly, nuzzling her hand, and she smiled despite the chaos around them. The Emperor stepped forward, revealing himself fully for the first time. The human froze, fear flashing in her eyes, but he raised a hand in peace. "You have shown courage," he said, "and because of you, I see the truth about humanity. You are not weak. You are remarkable." The human blinked, unsure how to respond. She had faced death and danger, and yet now stood before the Emperor of Dragons. Yet somehow she felt no fear, only a quiet pride and the knowledge that she had done what she believed was right. The Emperor's perspective began to shift. He had ruled through power and fear for centuries, yet here was a being who inspired respect and loyalty through courage and kindness alone. He began to understand that the strength of humans was different from his own, yet equally valuable. He realized that he could learn from them, and perhaps even change the way he ruled his empire. As dawn approached, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, the Emperor, the human, and the baby dragon stood together, facing a new world full of possibilities. The trials of the night had forged a bond between them, a bond that promised to grow stronger with each passing day. The Emperor's life, once governed by fear and solitude, was on the brink of transformation, and he knew that this human had played a part in that change, a part far greater than any he had expected. And so, in the quiet of the early morning, a story of courage, friendship, and the power of compassion began to unfold, one small act at a time. The human, unaware of the full impact of her actions, continued to care for the baby dragon, and the Emperor, once distant and unyielding, began to understand that even the mightiest of rulers could be touched and changed by the bravery of a single human heart. The Emperor could not forget the human's courage. For centuries, he had faced countless battles, seen entire planets fall, and commanded legions of dragons. Yet nothing had left such a lasting impression as the sight of her protecting the baby dragon, small and fragile though she appeared. He realized he wanted more than observation. He wanted to understand her world, her mind, and the strength she carried within her. He returned to the cafe once more, landing silently on the roof. From there, he could watch the human at work without startling anyone. She moved with her usual calm efficiency, feeding the baby dragon, checking its wing, and humming softly as she worked. The creature chirped in response, nuzzling her gently, and she smiled, her eyes soft with affection. The Emperor felt a strange warmth in his chest, a sensation he had never experienced in all his centuries. It was not the thrill of battle nor the satisfaction of command. It was something different, something that made him question what he had believed about strength and power. Days passed peacefully, but the calm could not last forever. Word of the Emperor's presence on the border planet had spread quietly among the ranks of rival dragons, those who resented him and longed to challenge his rule. They saw an opportunity. The Emperor's attention had been diverted by a human and a baby dragon, and they believed this distraction made him vulnerable. A plan was formed to capture the baby dragon and humiliate the Emperor in front of the entire empire. The human had no knowledge of the plot, though she sensed danger in the subtle tension of the streets. The baby dragon, now stronger and more curious, chirped and hopped around her, its wings flapping in small, unsteady motions. She laughed softly, thinking it was playful, unaware that their lives were about to be tested in ways she had never imagined. The rival dragons arrived under the cover of night. They were massive, their scales glinting under the pale light of the planet's moons. Their eyes burned with malice, and their claws scraped against the stone streets with a threatening rhythm. The humans sensed them first. The baby dragon froze, its small body stiff with fear, and she immediately knew that something was wrong. She cradled the creature in her arms, her heart pounding. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice calm despite the terror building inside her. She scanned the streets, searching for a way to protect them both. Her mind worked quickly, calculating escape routes, hiding places, and distractions. Though she had no weapons, no armor, and no dragons to fight alongside her, she refused to surrender. The Emperor, observing from above, felt a surge of admiration. She was not retreating. She was preparing to face the threat head-on. Her courage was a force in itself, something he had never witnessed on this level. He knew he could intervene with overwhelming power, but he chose to remain hidden for now. He wanted to see how her spirit would endure the trial. The rival dragons appeared at the cafe's entrance, their massive forms blocking any exit. One of them roared, shaking the very walls, and the human flinched but did not falter. "Back!" she shouted, holding the baby dragon closer. "I will not let you take him!" The dragons laughed, their voices echoing through the empty streets. "You are but a weak human," one sneered. "Step aside, or you will be crushed." "I may be weak," she said firmly, "but I will not abandon him. If you want to fight, you will have to go through me." The dragons lunged forward. The human moved with surprising speed and agility, dodging their claws and rolling behind tables and chairs. She was small, yes, and no match for their raw strength, yet she managed to evade them at every turn. Her mind was sharp, her movements precise, and her determination unshakable. Each time a dragon struck, she countered with cleverness and quick thinking, buying time for the baby dragon to stay safe. The Emperor could not help but intervene silently. He landed on the street, massive wings folding behind him, but he remained a shadow, observing rather than attacking. He wanted the human to understand something important, that her courage was not only extraordinary, but also inspiring. She faced impossible odds, and yet she did so with her mind and her heart, not with the strength of claws or fire. The battle escalated. The human used everything she could find as tools: metal trays, chairs, even crates, throwing them to distract and block the dragons. She shouted and moved constantly, her strategy guided by instinct and the deep bond she felt with the baby dragon. It was a dance of survival, courage, and cleverness. And the Emperor realized that humans had a type of strength that dragons often overlooked. It was resilience, intelligence, and the willingness to act despite fear. Hours passed like minutes. And eventually the rival dragons, frustrated by their inability to capture the baby dragon, withdrew. They hissed and spat threats, but knew they had underestimated the human. She stood in the aftermath, exhausted but unbroken, the baby dragon clinging to her chest. She looked around, breathing heavily, and whispered softly to the creature, soothing it. The Emperor stepped forward fully for the first time. His massive form cast a shadow over the street, and the human froze. Fear flashed in her eyes, but she did not drop the baby dragon. Instead, she held it closer, ready for whatever might come next. "You have done well," the Emperor said, his voice deep and calm. "You have shown courage, intelligence, and heart. You are remarkable." The human blinked, unsure how to respond. I was just protecting him," she said softly. "I couldn't let them hurt him. And yet, what you have done is more than protection," he said. "It is leadership, bravery, and strength in ways I have never seen before. You remind me that power is not always measured by fire or claws, but by courage, compassion, and the choices we make when faced with danger." The human looked at him, seeing not just a dragon, but an observer, a being of immense wisdom and power who had come to respect her. Thank you," she said quietly, though she did not fully understand the impact of her actions. The Emperor felt something he had not felt in centuries: admiration, not for conquest or victory, but for a single human heart that dared to act with courage. He realized that this human had taught him a lesson that no battle, no empire, and no victory ever could: that strength could exist in forms beyond raw power, and that the smallest being could inspire the greatest change. Days passed after the confrontation, and the Emperor began to interact more openly with the human. He visited her cafe, landing carefully outside to avoid startling others, and watched as she continued to care for the baby dragon. She no longer feared him as much, though she remained cautious. Over time, she came to understand that he meant no harm, and a cautious trust grew between them. Together, they developed routines to care for the baby dragon. The human taught him patience and observation, while the Emperor observed her methods, noting the intelligence, compassion, and creativity she displayed. The baby dragon, once weak and injured, began to grow stronger, learning to flap its wings and test its newfound strength. The human encouraged it gently, praising small successes and calming it when it stumbled. One evening, as the three of them watched the sunset from the rooftop of the cafe, the Emperor spoke quietly. "I have ruled for centuries," he said, "and I have seen many creatures, many acts of courage, but I have never seen one like you. You have reminded me that true strength lies not in power alone, but in courage, compassion, and determination." The human smiled, though she looked shy. "I am just doing what I feel is right," she said. "I don't think of it as strength. I just care. And that is why it is strength," the Emperor replied. "You act despite fear. You act because you believe in doing what is right. That is something dragons do not always understand, and yet it is perhaps the greatest power of all." Their bond grew stronger as the days passed. The Emperor began to understand the nuances of humanity, their resilience, their creativity, and their ability to inspire trust and loyalty without fear or dominance. The human, in turn, grew to respect the Emperor, seeing not only his immense power but also his capacity for understanding, curiosity, and even humility. But peace was not to last. Word of the baby dragon and the human's bravery spread across the galaxy, reaching ears that hungered for control and dominance. Rival dragons, motivated by jealousy and ambition, began to plan another attempt, more organized, more dangerous, and more determined than before. This time they would not retreat so easily, and the Emperor knew that the human would face dangers unlike any she had yet encountered. The night before the expected attack, the human sat with the baby dragon, speaking softly to it as it nestled against her chest. "Tomorrow will be difficult," she whispered, "but we will face it together. You are stronger than you know, and so am I." The baby dragon chirped in response, nuzzling her neck as if to offer reassurance. The Emperor observed from a distance, feeling a mixture of pride and concern. He knew that the coming confrontation would test them both in ways they had never experienced. Yet he also knew that the human's courage, ingenuity, and compassion would not falter. He had seen her rise to impossible challenges before, and he had faith that she would do so again. As the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, the city stirred with life, unaware of the storm approaching. The human and the baby dragon were ready, their bond unbreakable, their spirits unyielding, and the Emperor, once distant and solitary, prepared to stand alongside them, not as a ruler imposing power, but as a guardian and witness to courage, a participant in a story that was greater than any throne or empire. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test strength, wit, and heart. And through it all, the human's courage would shine brighter than any fire, proving once again that even the smallest beings could inspire the greatest change in the universe. The morning air was crisp, and the first rays of sunlight glinted off the towering cliffs and spires of the city. Birds chirped and aliens moved about their daily routines, unaware that a storm was about to descend on their quiet streets. The Emperor stood at the edge of a rooftop, watching over the human and the baby dragon. He felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. He had seen the courage of the human in action, but the rival dragons coming this time were stronger, smarter, and more determined. The stakes were higher than ever. The human, unaware of his silent presence above, moved with calm efficiency through the streets, carrying the baby dragon carefully. Its wing had healed enough for short flights, and it chirped with excitement, hopping on her shoulder and peering over the edge of buildings. The human smiled softly, whispering encouragement to the small creature. "Soon you will fly like the wind," she said, "and we will be ready for whatever comes." The Emperor watched and felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. For centuries he had believed power was the measure of all things. Yet here was a human who wielded strength in a different way, through courage, compassion, and determination. He realized that the greatest lessons he had ever learned came not from victory or conquest, but from witnessing others rise to challenges despite fear. The rival dragons appeared without warning, descending from the sky in a wave of scales, claws, and fire. They were massive, their eyes glowing with malice, and their roars shook the streets. Civilians scattered, some diving for cover while others froze in fear. The human instinctively shielded the baby dragon, holding it close to her chest, her body tense but resolute. "Stay calm," she whispered to the dragon. "We can do this." The Emperor could see her mind at work. She was scanning for escape routes, calculating angles, and planning her moves with precision. She had no weapons, no armor, and no reinforcements, yet she faced creatures that could crush her with a single swipe. Her courage was extraordinary, and it stirred something deep within him. The rival dragons attacked. Claws scraped against stone and metal, flames licked the walls, and the city shook with the force of their assault. The human moved with agility, ducking and dodging, using whatever she could find as shields or distractions: metal trays, tables, crates. Each time a dragon lunged, she rolled or sidestepped, keeping the baby dragon safe. The Emperor could no longer remain hidden. He descended to the street, massive wings folding behind him, but he did not attack. His presence alone caused the rival dragons to hesitate. They had underestimated the Emperor's power and were wary of engaging him directly. "You cannot win," one of the dragons hissed. "Step aside, human, or perish. "I will not step aside," she said firmly. "I will protect him, no matter what." The Emperor's eyes narrowed in admiration. Her words carried authority and fearlessness, even though she was small and fragile compared to the creatures before her. She had proven that true strength was not measured in fire or claws, but in courage and the willingness to act when others falter. The battle escalated. The rival dragons attacked in coordinated strikes, circling and lunging, trying to overwhelm the human and the baby dragon. She used her wits to stay one step ahead, leading the dragons into narrow alleys, between buildings, and into areas where their size became a disadvantage. She guided the baby dragon, encouraging it to test its wings in short, controlled flights, using its small bursts of strength to distract and confuse the attackers. The Emperor joined the fight, but carefully. He blocked attacks, shielded the human, and used his immense power strategically rather than recklessly. He allowed the human to demonstrate her courage, knowing that her bravery was what made this confrontation extraordinary. She inspired him in ways no battle ever had. As the fight reached its peak, the rival dragons grew frustrated. Their attacks became desperate and chaotic, and the human remained calm and focused. She saw an opening and led the baby dragon to a higher rooftop, jumping and landing with precision. The creatures followed, but their larger size made them clumsy on the narrow ledges. The Emperor landed beside her, and together they faced the rival dragons. The human spoke quietly to the baby dragon, her hands steady and her eyes determined. "We can do this," she whispered. "Trust yourself. Trust me." The baby dragon chirped and flapped its wings, ready to fight alongside her. It had grown stronger under her care, its courage fueled by her unwavering support. It darted toward the largest of the rival dragons, distracting it and allowing the human to maneuver cleverly around them. The Emperor observed, marveling at the coordination between human and dragon. The bond they shared was extraordinary. They communicated not with words alone, but through trust, instinct, and understanding. He realized that this was the kind of strength he had been missing in his own life: connection, loyalty, and courage combined. Finally, the rival dragons were cornered. They hissed and spat threats, realizing that brute force would not win this battle. The human and the baby dragon stood their ground, while the Emperor loomed behind them, a silent but formidable guardian. "Leave now," the human said firmly. "You have had your chance. Go before it is too late." The dragons hesitated. They had underestimated her, underestimated the baby dragon, and underestimated the Emperor's willingness to protect what mattered. Slowly, they retreated, casting glances of fury and disbelief as they disappeared into the distance. The city fell silent once more. Dust settled on the streets, and the human held the baby dragon close, whispering soothing words to calm it after the ordeal. She looked up at the Emperor, who had been watching silently. Fear had been replaced with trust. Respect had replaced awe. "You were incredible," he said, his deep voice resonating across the street. "I have never seen courage like yours. You have taught me a lesson I will not forget." The human smiled, though exhaustion lined her face. "I only did what I had to do," she said softly. "I couldn't let him be hurt." "And yet, in doing so," the Emperor replied, "you have shown me the greatest kind of strength. Power alone is not enough. Compassion, courage, and loyalty matter just as much, if not more. You have changed the way I see the world." The human's eyes widened in surprise. "Changed the way you see the world?" "Yes," he said, his gaze distant for a moment, as if looking across centuries of his own life. "I have ruled through fear and power for centuries, and I believed that was all that mattered. But watching the choices you make, the courage you display, the care you give, I understand now that strength is more than domination. It is also protection, compassion, and the willingness to act despite fear. The baby dragon chirped happily, hopping onto her shoulder. It had grown stronger, braver, and more confident, a reflection of the human who had nurtured it. The emperor looked at the scene, realizing that life could be more than rules, fear, and conquest. He saw a future in which empathy and understanding could exist alongside strength, a future he wanted to help create. Over the following weeks, the emperor returned to his empire, but he was no longer the same ruler. The lessons he had learned from the human and the baby dragon reshaped his approach to leadership. He introduced reforms that emphasized cooperation, respect, and understanding across all species. Fear was no longer the foundation of his rule. Trust and mutual respect became its pillars. The human, offered a place by his side, chose to remain with the baby dragon for a time, teaching it to fly and care for itself. The emperor respected her choice, knowing that her compassion and wisdom were gifts he could not take from her. When she did travel to his palace, it was as an advisor and equal, her insights valued not for her strength but for her heart and mind. Together, they forged a new era. Humans and dragons began to work side by side, learning from each other, sharing knowledge, and fostering a culture that celebrated courage, empathy, and creativity. The emperor, once solitary and feared, found joy in these connections, discovering that leadership could coexist with friendship, care, and respect. The baby dragon, now fully healed and confident in its strength, flew freely alongside its human protector. It chirped and soared, a symbol of hope and transformation. The human laughed, her joy clear and unrestrained, and the emperor watched, a rare smile on his face. In their small victories, he saw the promise of a universe where bravery and compassion could flourish together. One evening, as the sun set over the dragon cities, the three of them, emperor, human, and baby dragon, stood on a cliff overlooking the world they had helped shape. The sky was painted with brilliant colors, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of life. "You have changed more than just this planet," the emperor said softly, looking at the human. "You have changed me." The human smiled, a quiet, humble expression. "I only did what I could," she said. "I never expected to change anything." "And yet you did," the emperor replied, "because courage, kindness, and the willingness to act. These are things that even the greatest power cannot replace. You have reminded me of what truly matters." The baby dragon chirped, flapping its wings as if in agreement, and the human laughed. The emperor felt a lightness he had never known, a sense of hope and possibility. For centuries, he had ruled with strength and fear, but now he understood that even the mightiest could learn, grow, and be changed by the courage of a single human heart. In that moment, the emperor realized that the universe was not only a place of conquest and power, it was also a place of connection, courage, and compassion. And as he stood there, watching the human and the baby dragon, he knew that his life and the lives of those under his rule would never be the same again. The story of a small human, a baby dragon, and the emperor of dragons became legend across galaxies, not because of battles fought or empires conquered, but because of courage, compassion, and the power to inspire change. A single act of bravery had transformed a ruler, saved a life, and opened the door to a new era of hope, understanding, and unity. And so, the emperor, the human, and the baby dragon continued their journey together, proving to the universe that even the smallest beings could spark the greatest transformations, and that courage and kindness were powers beyond measure.